Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melissa Caprio.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. Oh my God, can you believe we are in December already? I'm like, where did this crazy year, by the way, go? Like, I can't believe we're going to be in 2025. Like, in less than 30 days. It's just nuts. I hope everybody is doing well. I know there's craziness and a lot of things going on in the world. So I hope you guys are all staying grounded. And for those who are in the United States, I hope Thanksgiving was really good for you and you got to spend it with either your family or friends or loved ones, and you found things to be grateful for. So today I have a really interesting guest. She's an intuitive, a death doula, and a channeler, Helen Gretchen Jones, and she is going to join me in just a couple of minutes. To my regulars, I want to say thank you so much and happy holidays. And I really appreciate you listening to me each week. And I get your emails, and it means the world to me that you enjoy my show and you like the variety of guests that I bring on. So I really appreciate that. And if you're joining me for the first time, I want to say welcome and I hope that you enjoy the show. And I hope that you'll come back to listen to more shows. And just so you know, that we do record the shows live. So if you are liking the show and you want to listen to other shows that I've done, you can always go to Om Times Radio in the archives and you can hear all of the shows, the replays, anytime you want. And of course, there's always a description about who the guest is and what the show's about. And I also put it up on postcards to the universe.com, which is my website, under podcasts. So you can find out all the information about previous shows and you can listen anytime you like. And of course, we're on all the podcasting platforms. A little bit about me. If you don't know, I am a photographer, I'm an artist, and I'm an author. And I have a book titled Postcards to the Universe, Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And in my book, I talk all about manifesting and using manifesting postcards, kind of like a vision board, to create what it is you want to bring into your life. And now that we are at the end of the year, this is a great time to create a little manifesting postcard and send it to me. I photograph it. And when your story shows up in your reality, we can share the story. So in my book, I have 30 manifesting stories and the photos I took of the postcards and we share all about manifesting in areas of health and love and money and wellness and abundance. And I have a lot of writing exercises. It was so much fun to create the book, and I even rephotographed all the original postcards from when the book came out because it's been 5 years already. I can't even believe it. It's been 5 years. So my photography has changed. I've changed. I've grown. Things have just blossomed. So, yeah, it's been fun going back over the old stories, the old images, I mean, and resharing new images from the story. So, if you want to know about how to do or send me a manifesting postcard, go to go to postcardstotheuniverse.com and there's a how to and where to send the postcard. But I'm telling you, setting your intentions for the new year is really, really great. What is it that you want to bring in 2025? Start thinking about those things and adding a visual component to it, to me, just makes it even more magical. And then I take them and then I photograph them, and boom, we just even share even bigger to the universe. So, okay, let me get to my guest today. Helen Gretchen Jones is a compassionate death doula. She's an intuitive, a channeler who writes about shared death experiences and the essence of spiritual consciousness. Her writing focuses on fostering loving connections with oneself and others, and her work emphasizes trusting personal experiences and the teachings she channels from her team in spirit known as the A Team. I love that. Helen holds a dual master's degree in art history and theology from St. Edward's University. She's also a certified in sound bowl therapy, Reiki, hypnosis, and past life regressions. Beyond her role as a death doula, Helen serves as an intuitive guide delivering messages from spirit. She co teaches seminars with her community, ranging from grounding techniques to interpreting messages and signs from spirit, enriching the lives of diverse women across Central Texas. When she's not working with hospice patients, writing, or teaching, she can be found on her family ranch hanging out with her husband, Taylor, their children, Ty and Ellie, and their menagerie of animals, including birds, cats, llamas, and goats. Oh, how cool. And if you want to find out more about her, go to her website, helengretchenjones.com. I'm going to spell it for you because we're on radio. It's Helen, Helen, Gretchen, Gretchen, Jones, Jones.com. Welcome, Helen. Thanks so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to talk to you about this because not people have heard obviously doula and they think of birth, right? That's what they think.
Yes.
Now, so too many people don't think of a death doula. So, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and how you got into the work that you're doing and what inspired you to do this kind of work? Because I imagine it can't be easy to do, this kind of work.
It can be difficult, but for the most part, when I enter into the situation, I feel very, very prepared and centered. So it's not as hard as some might think.
Yeah.
But I'd always had a connection to spirit ever since I was really, really little. So there is a spiritual component to my work as a death doula, but a death doula is simply someone who assists someone through their transition. And doula literally means to assist. So it could be through birth or it could be through death.
Mm.
Whenever I'm sitting with a patient, though, I utilize my intuition and my connection to spirit, but not all death doulas do that. And it's certainly not a requirement for being a death doula. But in 2015, my dad transitioned, and he was only in his 50s. He was very young,
Mm.
and yeah, I know it was it was hard on the whole family, and it
Yeah.
was relatively unexpected. And there was so much that still needed to be said and healed between my dad and especially one of my sisters. And
Mm.
when I learned about a death doula as someone who can bring closure and peace to both families and the patient before they transition, I thought I want to be a part of that. If I could relieve someone from experiencing what one of my sisters did through the not having closure through the death of a parent or a loved one, I wanted to be a part of that. So that's how I got started.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I lost my sister 2 years ago, kind of unexpectedly, also, and yeah, I think that we need to do more of this kind of work that you're doing because I don't think a lot of people are familiar with that it may be an option for them, especially obviously if you have somebody I mean, it has to be somebody who we know is transitioning because if you die in an accident, right? I mean, you
Right.
can't. Right. So you're dealing with the end of someone's life and to have somebody help you through that process, I think is such a beautiful thing that you can do. And do families call you? Do you work through hospice? Like, how would somebody go about finding a death doula?
So there are websites. Um, uh, I'm trying to think of INELDA, International
Mm,
Association of Near. I'm sorry,
that's okay.
International End of Life Doula. That's what it is.
Okay.
You can look them up. There's a large group of death
Mm,
doulas, and they have sort of like the yellow pages of death doulas. But I get hired by patients and I've also been hired by their families. It depends
Hmm.
on sort of what they're looking for. And then I also do volunteer work through hospices and through a program called NODA, which is a No One Dies Alone program that's hospital based. So I'm sort of using my skills both through as with clients and also through volunteer efforts.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. You know what? I think knowing myself and now kind of the work that I'm doing, if I knew I was terminal, I would probably hire it. I would hire somebody like you for my family, and for me to help me through the process, knowing that that would be an option. I just think that's so beautiful. So, is that what your book, Healing Whispers from Spirit Guides? Do you talk about the patients and the clients that you work with in the book, or is your book more on connecting with your spirit guides and having conversations, or both, actually?
It's a little bit of both. It's a lot of my patient stories, actually. So every other
Mm,
chapter is a beautiful story of how one of my patients, hired or volunteered, it doesn't really matter, how they transition their journey towards death. And usually it's a shared spiritual connection that I have with them as they're transitioning. So I shared those stories and
mm,
yeah, oh, they're so beautiful. And let me tell you, I've been journaling these for years. So when I decided to write the book, I just picked some of my favorites. Um, and also, the chapter before each patient story is what I've learned by serving the dying community, and also what I've learned through interacting with my team in spirit and having other interactions with spirit in general. So, and I end each chapter with a channeled message from my team in spirit, whom I call A Team. So it really kind of covers a
mm.
lot of information in the book.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're going to have to definitely share some of those stories. But before we do, I want to ask, when you say your A team, when you were a kid, were you getting messages? Like, were you talking to spirit and you didn't know what it was? And like, you're telling your parents and were they like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this? Or were they more open and it was very open in your home? I'm always curious about that when I talk to people who connect with spirits, because I get varying degrees from my guests. Some people are like, oh no, my family was very religious and totally closed off. And then I get others who are like, oh yeah, I found out my mom was intuitive or my father was, that kind of thing.
So for me, my family was not religious and they were not open to it. So
Okay.
I remember getting messages from spirit when I was very, very little. Um, I would be 4 or 5 years old, and I would go and get into an empty bathtub. And that was my way. No one would bother me in the bathroom, and I could just focus on the silence for a little while. And it was there frequently that spirit would come through and just basically tell me everything's going to be okay. And it wasn't a visual. Usually, it was just a voice and tell me, and it would make me feel better. Now, sometimes I would get the visuals, and then I would go tell my parents, and they would say, "Oh, especially my dad. Oh, I believe you believe that's what you saw," which is very
Right.
dismissive. But
Hmm.
the experiences, even as a young teenager and as a young child, were so transformative that it didn't make me question the validity of the experience. It made me question if my parents had the wisdom that maybe I was receiving. It made me question how much they really knew. So I never really put it away, and disbelieved
Hmm.
if even if they made me think it was imagination or a dream or whatever they tried to tell me it was. I knew better, but it did make me sort of question their wisdom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think now, if I'm sure you've noticed as we're progressing that we are, more and more people are doing this kind of work, and you meet more and more, like, it's like talked about more at like dinner conversations now, which I kind of love, like people aren't afraid to say, oh yeah, this is, I channel spirits, or I read, oracle cards, or I get messages from angels, or you know what I mean. And I love that
sure.
it's becoming more mainstream. Okay. So as you're working with a person who is transitioning, If you wouldn't mind, I would love for you to share one of the experiences that you've had. Obviously, you have permission from the people, or you change their names or whatever, because you wrote it in your book. So if you could share something with us, that would be wonderful.
Yes, I did change their names just to respect their privacy and the
Mhm.
family's privacy.
Sure.
But the most transformative experience that I have ever had so far is the story of Mr. Virgil.
Hmm.
I had been out late, and it was past midnight, which is late for me. And I saw an email come through that was notifying me of a NOTA activation. So there was a patient who was actively dying. That would be someone who's going to transition in the next 72 hours. And
Okay.
they don't have family, or family couldn't come in, or they
Mm,
burned all their bridges, or they're the last of their kind. So they need
wow.
volunteers to come in and sit with them in the hospital. So I looked to see what time shifts are available. They do it in 3-hour shifts. And all the good
Mm,
shifts were taken, but I did see that there was an availability at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, that was in just a few hours, and I knew that if I were to make it to the hospital on time and presentable, that I was going to have to wake up at 4:30. And I was so tired, but I felt this gut feeling that I needed to be there. And so I told A Team, I'm just like, all right, guys, if I'm supposed to be there, you're going to have to wake me up. I'm not setting an alarm. Well, sure enough, at 4:28, I wake up to the sound, a song in my head, and it's Colors by the Black Pumas. And I don't know if you've ever heard that song, but it talks about the blue skies and the green meadows and the tree leaves, and it's a beautiful song. And even one lyric that I hadn't heard before at this time, it says, "Now take me to the other side," which I hadn't ever heard before until I heard this at this point. So I was like, "Oh, okay, this is going to be relevant somehow." So I get up, I get dressed, I hop in the car, I turn on the radio. Colors by the Black Pumas is playing on the radio
oh,
now, and I'm
wow.
like, okay. And then I get a quick download of information from A Team that my patient is going to be male, he's going to be Black, and he's going to be suffering with panic attacks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
At the time, I was having panic attack issues that I don't know. They seemed to come out of the blue. Now I know there's really a reason for everything. But I was worried about going in because if you've ever experienced a panic attack, sometimes watching someone else have one can trigger one for you. So I was really worried for
Mm,
myself going in, but I needed to set that aside. And as I stepped in, sure enough, there was Mr. Virgil, male, Black, and having panic attacks about every 90 seconds.
oh,
So
wow.
it was, it's really, if you are just physically focused, it can be really hard to watch, which is why I had to tune in to him on a more spiritual level. The reason that A Team gave me the information about him, like, Black, male, panic attacks, that kind of thing, is just so that when I arrive and it's validated, then I know that I'm tuned into A Team and tuned into spirit, and that I'm ready to go on this journey with this patient. So as I sit down with Mr. Virgil, and I realized he was on medication already to calm his anxiety, and it wasn't working. I was going to connect to him on a spiritual level. And as I laid my hands on his arm, the hospital room seemed to like transform into this, just like the lyrics of Colors.
Mm,
Blue skies, green meadow. Excuse me.
mm.
Pardon me, I was coughing for a second.
Yeah, I was
And it
gonna
just
say,
seemed to,
I thought you disappeared. I'm like, wait a second, do we have a connect? Oh, okay. So you were
I
you were
just need,
coughing. Okay. Maybe
I
he's here.
apologize. Yes.
That's all
He's
right. He's
here.
here, right? He's here right now. Going. All right. Make sure you tell my story the right way.
That's
Okay.
too
Go
funny.
ahead.
I just muted so you wouldn't hear me coughing. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay. No, that's okay. As long as we didn't lose a connection. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
So it was beautiful, and I'm in this
Mm,
green meadow, and when I'm standing there, and this frequently happens where I'm in two worlds at once with my patient, it's a shared death
yeah.
experience. So when I'm standing there, though, every blade of grass emanates light. Every leaf emanates light from the inside out.
Wow.
Every single thing seems to have a life of its own and a light of its own. And there's this tone or melody. Maybe it's
I've
a
heard
humming.
that.
Well, I can't explain it. There's no beats like drums, like
Right.
music, but there is music. It's a
Yeah.
sound. It's coming from everywhere, coming from everything. And as I'm standing in this field, in this meadow, I am standing next to another version of Mr. Virgil. And so I'm aware that I am in the hospital holding Mr. Virgil's arm. And I'm also aware that Mr. Virgil and I are both standing in this beautiful field.
Oh, I
Now,
just got
I can,
goosebumps. I just
yes,
got goosebumps when you said that because that is, yeah, I mean, that is a even deeper experience that you're having than just being there and comforting somebody who's transitioning. I mean, you are like in and out of spirit world, or you're getting the vision of it anyway, of the spirit world, and you're still on the physical plane. That's pretty amazing. That's amazing.
yes.
Go ahead.
It's
Hmm.
definitely a shared death experience. I do have these fairly frequently with my patients
Wow.
as they transition. So as I'm sitting there with him, and also standing there with him, I can hear a welcome home party, which always happens. There's always some sort of welcome home party.
Mm.
It could be a
Oh,
big deal or as small as a picnic. But I know we have to walk through the forest that is straight ahead and off to the right a little bit to get to his welcome home party. He was nervous about entering the forest. He was afraid. He was not wanting to go, very apprehensive. And during this time, he had another panic attack. Suddenly, at that
wow.
time, I know it's really crazy. At this time, a being of light comes out of the forest to greet us. She's big, bigger than us. She's blue and white light. She is beautiful, and she is, I don't know, she is peace. She's
Mm,
just emanating this beautiful peace and love. And that's when I realized she's me. Obviously, I'm not a being of blue
right,
and white light, but
right.
I was her. She was me. And I could see from
Mm,
her perspective, I could see from my physical perspective sitting in the hospital room, and I could see the perspective of the person observing in the field. I was in three places at once. Mr.
wow.
Virgil told the me of light that he didn't want to enter the forest because he was very sinful. He had a lot of regrets. He'd done a lot of things
Mm,
he was ashamed of. And the me of light presented him with this little box, this little present. It was gold with a purple ribbon. And I said, "This is your life as Mr. Virgil. Everything you've ever experienced is in this box." And at that time, he could have done the most heinous act, or he could have not done anything. It didn't matter. I loved him so much. I have never experienced a love
wow.
like this in my entire life. He was absolutely perfect. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. It was all experiences. And so I was telling him that I was trying to portray to him that it was all experiences, that anytime he wanted, he could reopen this little gift of life as Mr. Virgil and re-experience it all over again, and from a different perspective. And he
Mm,
agreed to, it was really interesting. And he agreed to enter the forest with the me of light. And as we were walking through the forest, he had another panic attack, another fear set in about this
mm,
being a final goodbye for him. And I got really big, even bigger than I was, the me of light did. And I scooped him up like a baby. The forest fell away and it was replaced with a backdrop of stars, like we were in outer
mm.
space. And I held him, I cradled him. I tried to send him as much peace and love as possible. I kissed the top of his head. Excuse me.
That's okay. I made Helen, just so you guys know, I made Helen come on today because she's just getting over being sick. And I said to her
True.
yesterday, she's like, I sound hoarse. I'm like, you sound fine. Let's just do the show. You sound great to me. So I just wanted to let people know that's why if they hear you coughing, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's true. I
This
will
is
try to
I'm
mute.
engrossed. I'm engrossed in the story. So go ahead.
So I held him until he felt safe again, and then I placed him back down. And backdrop of stars, went back to the forest. And as we neared closer to the end of the forest, we could hear the welcome home party. I could see his mother waiting for him there. He turned to me and said, "What about my nephew and my uncle?" And it was at that time that the Me of Light gave him a projection of potential probabilities and possibilities for both people. And when that happened, I lost connection to the Me of Light, and my focus shot back to the observer in the field, in the meadow. It was as though I was not allowed to know what the potential possibilities of these two people were. When he felt that that was okay and he was satisfied with that, we continued on our journey. And when that happened, I came back to the awareness of the Me of Light. I was all three awarenesses again at one time. And he asked if he could sit at the end of the forest before going into the party. And he just needed some time to think before going in. And I said, sure. And I left him sitting there on a log, and I turned to walk back towards the meadow to the other me. And a nurse came in to take his vitals in our physical reality. And it kind of shot me back to my physically focused self and lost my connection to the other two. And the woman's coming in. She's like, "Oh, I'm going to a bachelorette party. And this, I'm going to be wearing this. And I haven't seen my friend since college." I mean, just going off on how great things were going to be that weekend. And I could just imagine, here we are about to enter this other welcome home party, and here she is talking about this bachelorette party. And I just loved the synchronicity of that. And it was at that time that the next volunteer came in to relieve me. And I'm like, oh, I could just stay, but I know that he's about to take his last breath, and I know he's about to go into that welcome home party. But the new volunteer came in. I said goodbye to Mr. Virgil and drove down the road to meet a friend for lunch. And that's when I was sitting there waiting for her. I got there a little early, and the cardinal came pecking on the window. And then my phone, I got the text that he had transitioned just minutes later. So it was wonderful.
Oh my God, that's what happened when my sister died. The cardinal came knocking on the window where my mom was, and that's how we knew she died. Oh my God, I just got chills. Okay, we're gonna take our break so that way you can you can get some water, and we're gonna come back because I want to hear more. That was amazing. All right, guys, stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on Om Times Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, Creating the Life You Crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So, right before the break, I was talking with Helen Gretchen Jones, and she is a death doula and a channeler. And she was just sharing an amazing experience she had helping somebody transition. And, Helen, during the break, what I was thinking, I was like, well, this is why you're doing the work that you're doing, because you have that ability. You have that ability to do that and to help people. I mean, even deeper and a deeper spiritual experience than just holding someone's hand through their, leaving their body. I think that's just amazing. And that, what a gift. God, don't you think? Like, I would be
Oh, I
like,
mean,
God, like, thank you for this gift, right?
I absolutely love it. It brings me closer to my own self-awareness. It really, I love that all of my patients who have given me a gift of an experience like that, what amazing teachers they are. And I'm an eager student, so I'm always interested to
Yeah.
see, what kind of experience I will have.
Oh no, that's just beautiful. I had an experience when my very good friend, her mother was dying, and we were at hospice, and she was at a center at a hospice facility around by her home, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and her husband was in the main area watching, I don't know, television, and I had fallen asleep on the cot at the bottom of the bed, and she was in bed with her mom, and I was asleep. I had fallen asleep, and I felt like I sat up and I said to her, I have to go. I have to go. I have to leave. And she's like, my friend. And she's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. I just have this feeling I need to go. I need to go. And I got her husband and we went back to the house. And I felt like it was her mom who was half in and half out, who
Hmm.
wanted privacy with her daughter and didn't want me in the room. Like, that was the feeling. That's what I got, and we had talked about it afterwards, and she said, yeah, she thought so too. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever had. Like, it took me out of a deep sleep, like I had fallen. I was out. I was so exhausted, and I just felt like I have to get out of here. It was really bizarre. So that's what I think. I think her mom was like, I don't want you here for this. This is private, you know?
And you were open enough to understand that gut instinct, that
Yeah.
intuition.
It was a wild experience. Oh my God. Yeah, why don't you share, if you don't mind, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us some other experiences that you've had. I would love to hear it, and I'm sure the people listening to the show would love to hear it because we all know, we all have lost somebody by a certain stage of our life, right? And we miss them terrible. And it's nice to have confirmation from somebody else that's witnessing this, that we will be reunited with our loved ones.
You know, and that's true, absolutely. I have served many people of many different religions and faith backgrounds through their final breath. One of my patients was a nun, a Catholic nun. Her name was Sister Bernadette. And
Mhm.
Sister, what I find really interesting is Sister Bernadette asked me to come sit with her, and she said she had a confession to make. And I was like, "Oh, do I need to go get a priest? Like, what are we doing?" And she's like, "No, shut the door." And I'm like, "Okay." She goes, "Sister Mary Catherine has been visiting me." And I'm like, "Oh, that's nice." I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, "No, you don't understand. Sister Mary Catherine has already gone home to our Lord, our Heavenly Father." And I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, to me, that's normal. When people are seeing loved ones, deceased loved ones, or beings of light at, bedside, I know they have a week or less left, usually. Usually, not always, but usually.
Mhm. Right.
And so I'm thinking, great. What's the issue here? And she's like, well, it's against my religion to commune with the dead. And I
Mhm.
remember, I remember thinking, no, you commune with the dead all the time. And you talk to God, you talk to Mother Mary, you talk to Jesus. And she goes, no, I don't. I pray to them. I don't commune with them. So this was sort of a sticking
Mhm.
point Because here she was showing
Interesting.
up at her,
Hmm.
showing up at her bedside.
That's
And
interesting.
so
I don't
the
talk with
only,
them.
I don't,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I don't commute with them. So the way that we worked around that was, I remember the story in the Bible where Archangel Gabriel came to Mary and told her she would be
Hmm.
having Jesus. And so I said, "Do you remember that story?" And she's like, "Yes." And I said, "Well, what if Mary Catherine is your vision? She's your messenger from God, like Archangel Gabriel was.
Hmm.
Maybe it isn't going against your religion. Maybe it is your faith." And so with that, she was able to find peace. I was just thinking about some of the challenges that people who are helping other people transition when they find distress at the end of life because something is occurring that goes against their very deep-seated faith-based beliefs. And this was one of them. And it was at that time that I think it's really important that if anyone is out there helping a loved one transition and they're experiencing something like that, that it's not the time to, negate beliefs or
Hmm.
to, well, maybe that's because it's wrong in the Bible or whatever it is. People ask me that all the time. No, your goal is to bring peace. So how can you make them shift their perspective so that it all connects and relates in such a beautiful way so that they can make that transition smooth for their loved one? I experienced the same thing with Mr. Arjuna, Mr. A. He
Hmm.
was Hindu, and his wife had transitioned 30 years before he was. And this was in his faith, she should have already reincarnated. So when she started showing up at his bedside, this was very distressing to him because did she do something wrong? Was she unable to escape karma? He had all these things that he wanted to really talk about to try to understand why she was there. So we did the same thing. We talked about maybe it was a vision, a message
Mm.
from God. We worked it that way so that it isn't, something that we were just trying to relieve what can be very, very distressing for people who have those faith that they want to cling to because it makes a lot of sense for them and brings them comfort. So I just thought it was important to bring that up. Those are small
Yeah.
little snippets. If anyone, because we're all going to help someone transition. You don't have to be a death
Right.
doula to do that. That's part of the gift of life. And
Yeah,
so I
that's
just
true.
wanted, so I just want to remind people that even if you're helping someone transition who maybe doesn't fully align to your spiritual or religious beliefs, it's not the time to argue that in any way. It's definitely the time
Yeah.
to find peace in it and help them find peace. So I thought that was important to note. But I can
Yeah,
share
that
another story if you'd
absolutely.
like.
Yes, I would love to hear another story. Absolutely. That is absolutely important. And you know, with especially with when you're super religious and you follow the text, sometimes, there could be maybe a blockage of maybe that there's something more that you don't know. It's something bigger, it's something greater than, right. And I don't think telling somebody at the end stage of their life they're not experiencing something they're experiencing probably is not comforting, right? Let just them have the experience they need to have.
And
Right.
I sit with families and they do try
Yeah,
to negate it. See, Mom, this is what I'm
sure.
talking about. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, like, let's
Yeah.
take a step back.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, please share another story. I love this.
sure. I had one story, also a NOTA patient, Mrs. Wilma. And when I
Mm.
showed up for Mrs. Wilma, they gave me a little binder, some information on her. I knew she was Baptist. So I started playing hymns from my phone.
Mm.
She had family. They were just unable to come in. They were in another state. So as I sat down, I sat in the seat next to her, and I held her right hand with my left hand. And as I did that, the hospital room transformed once again
Wow.
into a forest. And coming in from what seemed to be the hallway into the hospital room was a young girl. She was dressed in her Sunday best. Her hair was twisted in little pigtails. She probably was no older than 12. And I knew she was in black and white. And that is my sign from spirit that someone was around from 1920 to
Oh.
1969, respectively. Black and white photography. My husband's a
Yeah.
photographer. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Me too. So, no, it's interesting that you actually get the visions like that in black and white. It's interesting. And that gives you a timeline. Oh, okay. I love that. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Like black
Yeah.
and white photography. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I knew that this was a younger version of Mrs. Wilma. Mrs. Wilma was elderly. She was in her 90s. She was black, and she was having a very, very peaceful death. But when I placed my hands on her and her young version stepped in, I became aware that there was something more Mrs. Wilma needed to say. And the younger version of her walked over to me and took my right hand. And when she did, I felt free. I felt huge and expansive. I felt like limitless is what I felt like. And I felt so much love. She told me that we were going to climb a tree. And I'm looking in this forest, and I'm looking at the nearest tree. And I'm thinking to myself, how are we going to climb this tree? All the branches are up high. And just thinking about it with her, we were suddenly at the top of the tree. And
I love that. I love that. Oh, my God.
And I could see 360 all around me, even though I was staring straight ahead. And she said, this one tree believes that it is one life. But this tree has many roots. Each root believes it's its own life. Every branch believes it's its own life. Every branch branching off of a branch believes it's its own life. And every leaf believes it's its own life. But in reality, they are all parts of the whole serving the one life of this tree. And when you zoom back, this one tree is not just one tree. It's part of this whole forest. And this whole forest, if you zoom back even further, is part of this larger ecosystem. So basically, she was trying to teach, that everything is connected. Everything is always connected, and that we were always united. And this was an important overarching theme in her entire life. So for her, it was a teaching that she learned through separation, separated from family at time of death, separated throughout her life from family and friends, and then experiencing segregation as a child. Learning connection through separation was how she got there. But ultimately, when we could say, oh, what a hard life of separation, she was teaching it was really a life of connection. It's really about your perspective. So that was one of my favorite stories as well, because she's teaching how we are all one. We are all connected, even if we feel and appear separate. Excuse me. So Mrs. Wilma, she was teaching in her final moments, but she was beautiful. I'm sorry, Melissa, I can't hear anything. Melissa? Oh. Okay. So what I would also like to share, if you're interested in hearing, is a little bit about my team and spirit and why I call them A-Team. You had mentioned that you thought A-Team was an interesting name, and I agree that it is. I called them that. It just came to me, and I started calling them that. And then my husband, when I told him that I was calling my team A-Team, he told me, you mean like the 1980s crime fighters? And I was just like, what? And I guess it was a little before my time, but I was just like, no, that's a lame name. I want a different name.
Yeah, the A-Team was from the 80s, I think.
Yes. with Mr. T. I do remember
Mr.
Mr. T as
T.
a
Yeah, Mr.
personality.
T. Yes, yes. Oh my God. Sorry, I got disconnected and reconnected, so I'm back. You lost me there for a second.
I
I
was
don't know what's
told
going.
to,
Yeah, that's
I just
fine.
kept
That's
talking.
good, good. But I wanted to ask. So I understand now why you would be compelled to write this book, right? I get it. So because you had a similar experience when I was reading about you that I had, is that you were awoken and told to write the book. And I was kind of awoken and given postcards to the universe that I needed to do something with it. And that's how I created this whole thing. So it's just really interesting. So what happened? Like were you like in a dead sleep? You heard like, Helen, you got to write a book, or like how did it work for you?
About 3 years ago, I was asleep and I got awoken by my team in spirit. And usually I hear them in my head. The voice is usually in my head. This time it came from outside, like right in front of my face, the voice. And it just said, "You're going to write a book." And I'm like, write a book? What would I even write about? I didn't feel qualified to write a book. I've never had an interest in writing a book. But I had all these journals, that I've been journaling all these patient experiences for years. And they said, you're going to write a book. It's going to cover a lot of information, and it will take you about 2 years to complete. It took me 2.5 years. They were close.
Yeah.
And so I did it. I'm just following one step after the other. There was no expectation of outcome. I'm just, I don't know, taking direction.
Yeah,
So
you're
I did it.
following the guidance. You're following the guidance that you're given. Wow. So how was I mean, yeah. Well, you know why I mean, this is just my personal hit of why they asked you to write a book, is because you're meant to share with people who wouldn't normally get to meet you on a regular basis that these experiences are real, that our soul is, forever, and we move on and we go on. And the best way to show other people and teach other people that, and it gives so many people such hope, is by reading your experiences. So I mean, that's why I would think they would want you to write a book. Don't you think? Like, let as many people
I'm
know as
sure.
possible.
Absolutely. And it is important to know, too, that most of the time, almost every single time, with the exception of once, the person who's dying is already standing outside of their body before they take their final breath.
Yeah.
So I think that, yes, and I think that's important to remember when you're watching your loved one, and you're putting a projection of fear and suffering on them as they struggle to take that final breath. But really, the body is like a vehicle, and we hop in it, and we take it fast, or we take it slow, or we, take it in from maintenance or not. But excuse me.
Yeah.
But
No, but you're right. I think that was what the experience, why I think her mom was half in and half out. She was like out already, like, get out of this room, because that's how I felt. Yeah. So you're already on that. And you're not the only one who I've heard who has been at the bedside of a parent or a loved one when they were transitioning. They've called names of people that have already passed on. They're seeing they're already like halfway there, as it's happening.
Absolutely. The body is going through its natural process of shutting down, but the spirit of the person is observing from a safe place, and they are having a completely different experience than what we are observing.
Yeah.
And that's also supported by a lot of NDE experiences where, they're having CPR done in the hospital and they're actually above their body. We don't need to be in for that, the trauma or that suffering, but we can observe from a safe place.
Definitely. I've seen we went to a couple of psychics after my sister passed away, and my sister had special needs, and when she died, it happened so quickly that she kind of like jumped out of her body, and three different people said she was confused. She was looking like, what's going on? Like, she didn't realize that it had happened. And then my grandmother came, apparently, from what I've
Aw.
heard, is my grandmother came, to get her. But at first she was looking down at her body and everybody around her and not knowing what happened because she collapsed at her house in the hallway. She lived in a group home. So so that's how it happened. But she didn't realize it, and she was around for a little while trying to kind of figure it out. And so I'm sure that people who are in the process of transitioning, who maybe know they're dying, when they actually do leave their body, they must kind of just be watching the process for a little bit, right? Because like you said, your first client, the client you shared with us earlier, he was afraid. He was afraid of
He
where
was
he was
afraid.
going.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is, I mean, to me, this is just another confirmation. And that's why I like to have these shows and have people like you on. It's just another confirmation that it's okay, that our soul lives for eternity, that even if we lose somebody, we don't lose them forever. It's just temporary. It's just temporary. We're separated, but we're not even really separated if you can connect from the inside. Do you talk to people who have passed over on like a regular
I
basis?
do.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
not daily. I don't know what regular is. I don't do it daily.
well, like, I mean, more, enough that it's not like it's just happened once in your life. Like you can if you want to, I guess I should say.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Mm,
And, we all can. Every one of
yeah,
us is already spirit using a body. So you just have
right.
to sort of tune into that aspect of yourself to be able to tune into that aspect of everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've known that since my sister passed. Because it's funny because you said a forest, so that's my place. My spiritual place is a forest, interestingly enough. And I meet my sister there every morning. I talk to her every morning. She meets me there. So I've been having
That's
those
wonderful.
experiences, for the last like 6 or 7 months, and I've noticed it's made my intuition and my connection a lot stronger, which is pretty incredible. So I want to ask you, because this was in some of the notes that I found about you. It's something about that you call the Science Club and how it relates to our exploration of spirituality in the afterlife. What do you mean? Because you talk about that in your book, and I just want to have time to mention that.
Yep. So Science Club is a group of deceased scientists that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes join me in my closet. Like if I'm doing a meditation in my closet, it's the quietest room in the house.
Okay.
I had gone in with the intention of trying to better understand time, linear
Mm-hmm.
time, and that stuff with my team and a team.
Right.
And instead, a man appeared in my closet, and I could see what he looked like, and he was in black and white also, so I knew the time frame.
Oh
And he gave me all this information that I needed to look up, and it turns out his name was Paul Dirac. I didn't know who he was, but
my God. Okay.
he was a physicist,
Okay.
and yeah, he won a Nobel Prize. Like, he was kind of a big deal, but I didn't know at the time. I studied art, in college and
Yeah, me
theology.
too. I never heard his
Yeah,
name
yeah,
until just now. So go ahead. Until you just said it.
yeah. So he now joins like all these other scientists that come in from different, mostly physicists, but some other avenues and branches of science. And so they give me things to research and look up
Oh, that's
to better
great.
understand my reality based on religion.
That's so
I'm sorry, based on
interesting.
spirituality.
Yeah, that's so interesting because physicists and the math is what studies the universe, so it totally makes sense that physicists would be showing up to you to give you some science behind the spirituality, right? To help you understand it. Wow, that's really, really, really interesting. Now, do you have any like groups that you work with other people, or like if people want to work with you one on one, how can they do that? How can they find you? Are you teaching any workshops? Like what are you doing?
So I do have intuitive sessions that I offer from my website, which you read
Okay.
off earlier.
Mhm.
And I do local little in-person workshops with another medium here in Austin. Her name is Keisha Gallegos. So we co-teach things together But if anyone's interested in a session, they're more than welcome to reach out to me from my website.
Okay. And your website is again, just say it again so people have it.
Sure. www.helengretchenjones.com.
Okay, good. Yeah. So you guys, and if you're in Austin, go. I would, God, I wish I would come and see you guys for sure. What was I was just gonna ask you something, and it totally slipped my mind. Oh, I know what I was gonna ask you. Is there anything that we didn't get to share that you can share really quick? We only have like a minute left that you wanted to say, or a message you wanted to get across.
Well, obviously, I'm a death doula, and I volunteer a lot with hospice. And I think it's important to know that hospice is a really valuable resource, and you don't have to wait until last minute to join. This is a group of loving people, doctors, nurses, volunteers, who, if you even have 6 months, go ahead and hop on hospice. It's not giving up. It really is a valuable tool and resource in our community that can help all of us have an easier transition.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is so true. Thank you so much, Helen. It was such a pleasure, and I definitely should have you back because I got to hear more of these stories. Thank you. Thank you. I really, really enjoyed it today. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. And I'm wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.